Welcome back to another episode of Fishery. I know it's been a couple of years since you saw me last, but the boys have dragged me out of semi-retirement and I'm bouncing back to do another fishery focus for you. And this time we're down at Farlows Lake in Iver, Buckinghamshire. It's a lake that really doesn't need too much of an introduction from me if you've been around the circuit or the game for a few years. It's got a reputation going back 40 years. I mean, I remember reading about Farlows in Rob Malin's first book when him and Steve Briggs and some of the lads used to come up here for its very, very renowned winter fishing. And its reputation has gone on since then. In more recent times, the original Heron's Point Caff and pool table and bar has been bulldozed and been replaced with state-of-the-art facilities. A massive Eric's angling centre, a really good caff. Well, I just had a superb bacon sandwich from Jay in there, so I can vouch for that. Showers, toilets, state-of-the-art facilities, CCTV, total security. So the lake has come under new ownership some years back, and under the guidance of Ed McDermott and his team from Farlows of Pall Mall, the lake has really, it's not rested on its laurels, laurels is the fairest way to say it. It's consolidated its reputation and it's moved forward and kept moving forward. They've injected new fish, they've been working on the swims, and the whole feeling and vibe of Farlows now is that there's very, very few lakes in the country that can touch it in terms of facilities and a very, very enviable stock. Now the fish in here are all English lineage, English strain, and sourced from the highest suppliers, the highest grade and reputation of fish suppliers you can find in the UK. If you have a look at the fish on the website, your jaw will be on the floor. Heavily plated mirrors, incredible dark commons, the likes of which you'll find in very, very few fisheries in the UK. A number of these have exceeded £40, up to mid-40s now, commons and mirrors. And a lot of the fish in here, I think something like 35 different fish are over £30. So backed up with a very enviable and impressive number of 20s and doubles. The smaller fish being put in as part of the policy of introducing new growth for the future on a constant basis. You might hear the distant rumble of the M25, which is not too far away. After being here a very short while, that just fades into the distance and you don't even notice it. But I point it out because it's a fantastic access. We're within the perimeter of the M25 but it provides superb access for anybody in the southeast. Very, very easy to get to, whether you're fishing from the centre of London or like me, you come from Kent or Essex or anywhere in that southeastern quarter. In fact, thinking about it, if you were coming from the Midlands, Oxfordshire, it's only an hour across. So fantastic location with some enviable fish stocks. Now, I've fished here a few times over the years myself, done a few filming projects here, caught a couple along the way, and I've got an affinity for this lake. I really should come. When I came through the gates this morning, I thought, should have come back here and fished it before. And we're going to fish tonight, see if we can catch a fish to show you guys. In the meantime, before we get to that, we're going to have a look at the site. We're going to look at the swims. We're going to show you some of the key fish that reside in this fabulous lake. And later on, we'll talk about tactics if we get to that. And generally, hopefully, give you the full package. So, see you in a bit. There are a couple of lakes on site at Farlows, the second of which we'll get to later. The primary point of interest really, and certainly the most historical focal point of this complex is Lake 1, Farlows Main Lake. Farlows Main Lake is about 25 acres in size and is the home to 850 carp, so a very, very good healthy stock. A lot of very big fish, a lot of 30s, quite a few 40s. 20 pounders are pretty common. So whether you want to come and aim for your first 20 or your first 30 or even possibly a 40, those numbers of fish, the 40 pounds, are growing every year and becoming quite numerous. So whatever your target or aspiration, there's something in this lake that will appeal to you. The topography of the lake is of really scenic, beautiful interest because it comprises a whole chain of islands that run up the lake, Small bays, little reedy alcoves, big overhangs, trees in the water, bushes, deeper silty areas, shallow gravel patches, good lush weed growth. It's got the whole thing, everything that a carp angler could possibly want, and certainly everything that a carp could want. So we're going to have a look at some of the pegs as we go around the lake, some of the key ones. We're stood here at the moment in peg 10. The reason we're stood here is because this is, I thought I heard a fish then, sorry. This is possibly a point of interest for us to fish tonight. Now, we're right at the junction of a bottleneck really, as it runs down into the bottom end of the lake. We've got a spine of islands, a lot of weed growth. Always remember, wherever the thickest weed is usually where most of the carp are, regardless of the time of year. And just to our right, the weed starts getting really thick. You can see it up on the surface, really lush green abundance all over the place. It's also the area, not surprisingly, that's been doing a few fish. So find the weed, find the fish. I've seen a fish show when I was stood in here early this morning, out there between the islands. Good fish came out. So this is earmarked at the moment. We may come back and fish here, but we're going to be, throughout the course of our filming today and giving you guys an insight into what you can expect at Farlows, we're also going to be keeping our eyes peeled so that we can decide exactly where we're going to fish tonight to give us the best possible chance of a Farlows carp. So we're on the end of a rather brisk and very chilly northerly wind. We're well into November now, and winter is just around the corner. Well, it's upon us now. We've got a few frosty nights and the fish will start to gravitate towards their known winter lairs. Here at Farlows, one of the notable areas for that is the centre of the lake behind me, looking up between the islands. We've got Heron's Point and the shop and the calf in the distance. You can see those. Just next to that is a cluster of bivvies and brollies. That's actually a display area for bivvies and brollies. It's not a really busy swim, which is what I thought it was when I turned up. So we've got little islands dotted around the centre of the lake. We've got a little bay there. We've got another big bay to the left up this way, and lots of things going on. But generally speaking, the Smelly Bank, I don't know why it's called the Smelly Bank. It's always been called that. Maybe there was an old factory or sewer works or something over the back there. But along the Smelly Bank, quite often the fishing is necessitated at long range, out towards those middle zones between the islands. And very often the fish are out there, particularly when it's cold. And I think really that area of winter cold weather form goes back to the mail-in times, you know, in Foxpool, Tiger Bay and those early books when those boys were up here, the famous five, drinking their beer on the point and fishing out in the middle for a winter social. So once a good winter area, always a good winter area, I guess. So that's the Smelly Bank. We're looking up the lake north. We're going to take a little walk around and look at a few other swims next. Lake 2 at Farlows has been cultivated and nurtured by the management to become what is a very serious proposition in its own right. It's brimming full of carp, 700 of them, in about 6 acres, and they are the most splendid, magnificent scaly mirror carp you could ever imagine. When I looked at the portfolio of the stockfish in this lake a couple of hours ago, my chin was on the floor. They are absolutely splendid. Heavily plated mirrors, the likes of which you will very rarely find anywhere else in the country. They're growing fast. The average size in here is getting towards 20 pounds and the lake record is over 30 pounds. With this number of fish in the lake, it seems to me that if you get it right and you're on the fish, obviously the two main prerequisites, you could have a real bumper session. It also appeals to me massively as a cold water winter venue because it's not a very big lake. Doesn't seem to probably have the weed growth that Lake 1 has. So the fish are probably going to be out in the central areas, accessible from the point over opposite, or maybe one of these main swims along here. And I suspect that baiting accurately with maybe sweet corn, maybe a bit of stick mix, you could probably have a couple of nice frosty weather golden mirror carp on your mat. So Lake 2's a place I'm definitely going to be looking at in the future. Looks perfect for tutorial sessions as well. So I've earmarked this as a very likely venue for some future action, hopefully. So we're not fishing on this lake tonight. We're going to be fishing behind on the main lake, which is Lake 1. But this is Lake 2, flourishing, coming along very nicely indeed. So I've got a list of the biggest fish, the main 18 residents, if you like, that live in Lake 1 at Farlows, the main lake. Makes for some pretty impressive reading. So there's, right at the top of the list is a fish called the Big Common, which has topped out at 43.5 pounds. All of these fish that I'm about to read out to you, and you'll see images as I go through them, are growing year on year. They're all getting bigger and bigger. Some of these fish are very, very old. You know, the pedigree and history at Farlows is again second to none. It goes back a very, very long time with a lineage of purebred English fish that really is out on its own in a lot of ways. The commons are particularly impressive. If you go on the website, excuse me, and have a look at some of these creatures. I mean, the commons are these huge shouldered, chocolate brown, big-tailed, underslung mouth, sloping head beasts that keep us all awake at night. And there's plenty of those in the lake that go up to, as I said, 43.5 pounds. The biggest mirror in the lake is known as the Pretty One, and that has topped out at 44.25 pounds. So two very, very big fish at the top of the list. And they're closely followed by Tyson, which is in the 36 to 38 pound bracket. The House Common, which has topped out at 40 pounds and 12 ounces. Another common, so many big commons in Farlows, it's incredible. This is called the Smudge Common, and that has also topped out over 40 pounds at 40.4 £. Just behind that, you've got a fish called Crinkle Tail, which is a linear mirror carp. Very, very attractive looking fish. That's peaked at 38 pounds. And a pound behind that, peaking at 37 pounds, is the Cut Tail linear, one of the best known and most famous of Farlows residents. Indeed, a fish that I've been fortunate enough to have a meeting with myself when I filmed here with Simon Scott, probably pushing 10 years ago, and a lot less grey hair. But that is a majestic fish. I think when I caught it, it was about 28 pounds and it had spawned out. It was normally low 30s, but as I said, that's been up to 37 pounds now. Truly a majestic creature, I'm sure you'll agree. And just behind that, or actually on a par with that, is a mirror called Split Tail, which has peaked over 38 pounds. There's a lot of fish behind these in the 35, 34, low 30 pound bracket, which wouldn't even make the list. There's just so many of them. Indeed, one of the fish we saw this morning, we saw a picture of that got caught yesterday, a 34-14 mirror. You know, a huge framed mid-30 mirror carp. And as I said earlier, what a fish it was, huge tail. So we are fishing tonight. It is cold. The lake's it's just started to do a few fish, so it's not fishing too terribly, but it's not too great either. If we get a bite, I think we've done well, but no doubt about it, when we go to sleep tonight, the fish on this list in front of me will be swimming through our minds. And for me, I've always got a hankering for a big common, so fingers crossed we'll see what happens. So we're down on what is affectionately known as the M25 bank. We've got the road just behind us there. Sound barriered off actually, so it's not too bad. Got a lovely view up the lake towards the main complex. Why am I here? Well, we've been working today, so it hasn't been a normal fishing day, so finding the fish has had to be done on limited time. But I have seen a fish. I've only seen one today, but I was stood over there and I saw it come out in front of this swim. So that's more than good enough for me. It's also very, very close proximity to the area that has been doing the bites. Now, the swim that was doing the bites, which fishes in the middle of a big weed bed, became free a couple of hours ago, and the really nice guy in there, Steve, told me what was going on, and we had a long chat, and I toyed with the idea of going in behind him, but whenever you go into a swim that's been rinsed, it's never as good. I know people love doing it, and I may well blank here, but generally speaking, once a swim's done a load of fish, I usually find a lot of the time it's shot its bolt. So I preferred this area because, A, like I said, I've seen a fish. B, it's close, you know, it hasn't been fished. I spoke to everyone, it's not been fished for probably nearly a week, so that ticks a lot of boxes. It's the same zone, I've seen a fish, and yeah, I've got quite a good vibe about it. So I've set about trying to find some spots with a bare lead. It's inordinately weedy, really weedy, but I found two spots, so it's going to be a 2-rod night because it's starting to get dark already, and finding a third spot, it's the sort of swim that would probably require 5 or 6 hours of leading around in. But I found 2 corking spots, really nice, just with the bare lead. and I'm going to get a couple of rods committed out to those in the next hour or so. Put a bit of bait out, which I'll show you probably in the morning, my rigs and approach, but I'm going to put a bit of bait out, which is going to be a bit of chopped tiger nut, a bit of caster, and a bit of crumbed up sticky krill. So I'm going to get fishing, and we'll see if we can catch one of these beautiful Farlows carp. So good morning. We've completed a night, and it's quite a cold one, but towards dawn the temperatures lifted, and that's when I got a bite about 5 AM, and sadly came adrift in the weed, and I had a hook pull. These things happen when you're fishing in really thick weed. It stings, but that's the nature of weedy lakes, unfortunately. You just fish as strong as you can so you don't lose tackle, and if you get a hook pull, it's going to happen sometimes. But yeah, very disappointed that that chance went amiss. Since then, I've redone the rods, a bit more bait. We'll look at the bait shortly. There are fish in the area, and I feel like I should have caught one, but my angling this morning and through the night has not been particularly sharp because I've had a huge migraine and been laid low. Had to get on the cocodamols, it was that bad, but I'm starting to feel a little bit better now. But yeah, I feel it's a bit of a missed opportunity. There's fish in the area, and I think if I'd been on my game, I could have got another bite or maybe two. But anyway, one night is all we're doing. And a little bit about the area. Both of the spots that I found were very small, certainly only big enough for one rod each. So 2 rods all I fished during the night, and baited quite tightly, very tightly with the spom over the top. I think when it's as weedy as it is here, and it is very weedy, you can't put out a choddy or anything like that. I mean, the weed is coming off the bottom in 10 foot of water, you know. I mean, you can't present a bait on top of that. Well, maybe you could, but it would be pretty futile. So in my opinion, the only real effective way is to find a clean bit of bottom, whether it's silt, gravel, whatever it is, somewhere where the lead slides, and then fish it. Now that can necessitate several hours sometimes of feature finding with a bare lead. Don't even think of using a marker float or one of those feature finding leads, because it will just be an absolute disaster. Bare lead is all you need. And as I said, I managed to find 2 spots where I could get my rigs down on deck. They were smooth, clean, and I baited over the top. One of the rods did a bite. A couple of the things that you can use to your advantage when it's weedy like this, you need to get your rod tips up quite high. Some of the weed is drifting around, and if we had any wind today, that would be a major issue, because drifting weed beds take out rigs. And so try and get your rod tips up. One of the things I've been doing just to clear a little channel for my lines to lay in, I picked one of these up at Harefield Tackle yesterday, and and I've just been using that as a little weed rake, and it works very, very well. The weed here is not Canadian, it's some kind of very thick-stemmed Bistor or even Potamogeton, and it's very harsh, thick-stemmed, very, very dense, and you're going to need very stout gear to get fish out of that. I mean, forged continental hooks, and to come here, I think, with less than 0.4mm line would be suicide. So tight clutches, I'm fishing for a few bleeps, so I've got a bobbin on the drop. As soon as it hits the rod, it can't take any more line, but that's enough bleeps for me to get to the rod. The further the fish goes in weed as thick as this, the less chance you've got of landing it. So I've cleared a couple of little channels to try and get my line down, because there's swans and myriad bird life all over the place, as you tend to find at this time of year on every lake. The birds are hungry and on the lookout for food. I've seen some people putting out baits with a throwing stick. Not only do the seagulls get almost all of them, but your bait's just going to be hung up in forests of weed. It's just a complete waste of money, in my opinion. Complete and utter waste of money. So try and find clear spots with a bare lead. Get your rigs down. Clear little channels for your lines. Fish strong. Fish really strong, thick line. There's just no excuse for losing a fish is one thing, but losing tackle shouldn't be happening. Over and above that, laser pen. When there's this many coots about, absolutely essential. Be very, very careful where you use these. You've got to be responsible, or you're going to get them banned for all of us. And these are a very valuable tool. Don't point them at other anglers. Don't point them in the sky, anywhere. And we're near Heathrow here, so you've got to be responsible with these things, please. If you own one, invaluable tool for keeping the birds away from your spots. That prevents hookups. That prevents your bait getting disturbed and spread all over the bottom, and general disturbance. So there are a couple of the tools which are invaluable in situations like this. We'll have a look at the bait I'm using and the rigs next. So autumn and early winter are probably the hardest quadrant of the whole calendar, I think, nowadays. And if you fish predictably, then I think you'll struggle to get bites on really pressured lakes. What's predictable? Predictable could be making your hook bait look like a hook bait. Everyone's obsessed with it. The carp are tired of it. Just fish something in your mix which is part of the feed, which the carp are happily eating anyway. You put out a pink pop-up on a Ronnie rig, it might be cool, might be fashionable, but I'm telling you, you will get more bites fishing less obviously, particularly at this time of year. Carp have been hammered now for months. They're big and fat, they don't need any more food for winter. They're the weights they need to be. So if you just put out a traditional spod mix with a couple of stiff, bright pop-ups over the top, you will struggle, generally speaking. So my mix it's a mix that I use an awful lot, which is a blend of chopped tiger nuts, some casters, much better than maggot, and some trusty krill, sticky krill, which I'm crushing up and putting into the mix now. Whole boilies this time of year are really, again, a bit of a no-no. The bait itself, there's loads of good boilies out there. Blending them up and crushing them up at this time of year will give you a big edge. For me, it's still krill. It's not freezing cold yet. I'll change to the Manila maybe in a month's time. But at the moment, it's still krill time. So that's the bait mix. I'm fishing just for a bite. So I'm using the midi size spom. And I'm putting maybe 10 over the top, nice and tight over each rig. Topped up with another 10 after I lost that fish this morning, and another 5 on that spot as well on the left-hand rod because I'm getting heavily cooted. And yeah, that's the bait approach. I'm sure if I was doing another night, it would get me at least another bite, but we're here for one night and that's it. So yeah, I'll show you some rigs next. So a quick look at the terminal tackle that I'm using. It's all I ever use when it's really, really weedy. Simple rig tube, tail rubber, and a lead clip. It never tangles, and it ensures that you can always drop the lead, which is absolutely imperative. There's very, very clear water out there. I'm using the Mimicry lead clip and tail rubber system, which locks the swivel in place, which is essential if you want the lead to come off. And again, I've just nipped the tail rubber, give it a wet onto the end like that, and that will give you your best chance of landing the fish. At the sharp end, I've got a 5 or so inch length of some coated braid, which is the Gladio link. It's a fairly stiff coated braid, sinks slowly, and I flecked it up with a pen. It's got a lovely soft inner. I've given a couple of little pinches of putty, and you can see on the hair exactly what I was talking about, a hook bait that doesn't look like a hook bait. So this is a small tiger, which is atop a trimmed up half of krill hook bait. So that's it, very, very simple, and it's pretty much the setup I always use when I'm fishing in weed. The hook link is short because I always fish on a hard, clean bit of bottom. There's no need for any more length than that. And I have got 4 or 5 foot of Spectrum fluorocarbon leader on the end, which is probably about 40 pound, just to cope with that weed. Again, it's very, very thick stemmed, and I want all the robust durability that I can get. But in a nutshell, that is my setup for this session and what I use everywhere for when it's nice and thick with weed. At Farlows, you've got state-of-the-art security, so massive peace of mind in this modern age for your tackle and your own personal safety. Got huge fences all the way around, which are not only otter-proof but people-proof as well. At night, quite a lot of the gates are locked, so you will get locked in. If you're away from your vehicle in some of the swims, like the one I fished last night, bear in mind I keep a lot of my spares in the van, the things of no value, just spare clothes and things like that. So I fell in at 5 in the morning and I needed some clothes, so I had to suck it up until it got light and the gates got unlocked, but just bear that in mind. But what it does give you again is huge peace of mind, and the investment that's gone into the site really is second to none. To have this completely fenced around a 25-acre perimeter is quite a feat. So moving forward and doing things very well at Farlows. Well, that rounds off a very enjoyable 24 hours at Farlows. For sure, one of the premier carp fisheries in the country, and I really highly recommend you visit it. Some of the most amazing fish that you're likely to find anywhere, together with all of the state-of-the-art facilities that a good venue has in this modern age. So sadly we didn't get a fish, just the one bite which came off in the weed, but hopefully the tactics that I've showed you will help you if you come to Farlows or elsewhere in the UK as well. That's us signing off. Don't forget to upload your catch reports to Fishery.co.uk, and there's also some really, really accurate, nifty weather forecast on there, which I've found to be far, far more accurate than the BBC app that I was using. So check out the weather before you go, upload your catch reports, and hopefully we'll see you on the bank again soon for another episode.